Okay, I'm going to convene tonight's meeting of the Board of Selectmen for the 12th of September, 2012. First item on the agenda tonight is board acceptance of the agenda. I have not had anyone comment there, so we'll accept the agenda as prepared. I have had a conversation with town manager, though, and we will be putting off the conversation, number 2, the discussion on the sewer enterprise fund, solid waste enterprise fund, until a later time, I guess, maybe next week. So that's one small change. Announcements, Libby?
Sure, and just one quick follow-up on solid waste and sewer enterprise fund. We belatedly noticed today, because of schedules and other items that jumped in the way of this, that there are some totals that don't match, and that needs to be addressed and resolved. So when it is, we'll bring that back to you. Report on progress of Hummock Pond Road bicycle path. We've had a couple of construction meetings. Kara is going to give you, our DPW director, an update. And we did want to point out, our procurement officer let us know that there are 5 or 6, I think, local vendors that are currently working on the project or will be working on the project. So that is great news. And the path is, I think you've seen, hopefully you guys have been able to get out there a bit, is well underway, I would say.
I drove out and took a look at it yesterday, and they're all the way. They've got it all brush cut and grubbed from Cisco to
Up to Bartlett.
past Bartlett.
Past Bartlett, yeah.
Up to
Almost to what is it, Somerset.
They can't
Almost to that.
stop, they just keep going.
Yeah, they're doing good.
They really have done quite a bit. They have mobilized all the equipment, and as Libby mentioned, there's a number of local vendors who are doing a variety of things. Reese is doing some offloading, Toscana is doing some barging, Frank Holgate is doing surveying. I know I'm forgetting a few, and I apologize for that.
Are they like subs
Holgate
to the main
Partners is trucking.
contractor?
Yes, if I remember the email from Diane correctly, it was Victor who reached out and brought them in, so they're
Yeah,
subbing
good.
under
They're
the
working as
contract.
subs for Victor, but I know Holgate Partners is trucking materials in and out of there, so there's a bunch of them. As
Right.
many locals as he could get.
And they finished the clearing and grubbing, as you've mentioned, from the beach all the way up to Millbrook. Surveying is being done as we speak. There was initially an issue with some pole relocations, and that has substantially been handled. There's several abutters that we have to reach out to do some trimming and so forth to move the poles to the other side, and that's in progress. Sedimentation fencing is installed, and they really have done quite a bit of work in a very short period of time.
I just have one question, Cara. I see that when I drove by that one tree is still in front of Mr. Pease's house. Is that tree going to be able to stay there?
That's the survey that they're doing is going to determine whether that's feasible or not.
Was that the tree that we said we were going to modify the path a little bit
Move it around.
and go around it for now? Right.
Thank you.
There are a couple of other abutter concerns have popped up, so we're dealing with those, and if we need any action from you, we'll bring them to you at a later time. And we initially said we would give this sort of progress report to you every other week, but at the construction meeting that we had this week, because of preparation and activities and things, we thought it might be more appropriate every 3 weeks. So the next report we'll give will be October 3rd. In other DPW news, there are some road paving projects that are going to be occurring this week and next on Upper Main Street in town and New Street in Sconset, just so people know to take that into consideration with travel plans. And lastly, the Island Fair is this Saturday from 10 to 5 and Sunday from 11 to 4 at Tom Nevers Field. And hopefully you all will be able to make an appearance.
I'll try.
Oh, yeah. The Maritime Festival, sponsored by the Egan Institute, is next weekend, the 22nd, at Children's Beach. And there's lots and lots of activities, and I think someone here is involved in that.
Yes, I will be emceeing from 12 noon to 2, so please come by, because I'm sure I'll be looking for someone else to take the microphone. I know, I said yes a long time ago. All right, is that all?
That's it, yep.
Public comment? Anyone here tonight, Carol, with public comment for matters not currently on the agenda?
Carol Dunton, this is the first season that we have Channel 8, budget season, that we have Channel 18 available for government things. And I thought it would be enlightening for the financial elements to be broadcast, like Finance Committee, just the presentations, not the ongoing discussions of things. And then we have CPC and capital program. I think that would be a nice addition to the work administration has been doing on additional transparency.
Have you gone to the meeting, any of the meetings? I don't know when they are, but I assume
I
that the
mentioned
board's-
it to Airport because they're meeting.
No, I meant
No.
the Channel
Channel
18
8.
board meets.
There's a board. They decide what they're going to put on.
Yeah, there's
Rick?
it's a not-for-profit board.
Yeah, I serve on the board as our board's representative, and we have, we're working towards expanding their schedule, trying to fit labor costs and time on task. Probably the next major one is they're working on the school committee, to get the school committee up on 18. And I think we'd like to do lots of others. I know the planning board and HDC are also items in the queue. So, Carol, there are a lot of ones. Those are good ideas, but we're not unconstrained, if you will.
Right, there's budget issues, but you might go to, I don't know when they meet, if it's a regular schedule, but it probably is a good place to voice.
Oh, okay,
But I'd be happy to, I'll bring that up certainly at the next meeting, Carol,
okay.
because if we have time and the ability. Now, upstairs, I know, for example, they did a couple of Concom meetings, which are very instructive if you want to get into that detail, and you can sort of flip the switch, I say sort of, so it doesn't always take someone to be there all the time.
Right.
But they have a different sort of characteristic than being down here, so.
Right, because I would think it didn't necessarily always have to be live. They could just tape them, and it certainly doesn't have to be every meeting in
Right.
the budgetary issues.
So we'll see what we can do. I
The
got you.
FinCom meet in this room, though, right?
They do. It just, because there's a control room and things, it's not quite as easy, I don't think, as flipping
Somebody's
the
gotta be
switch
in there.
upstairs and other
Because
things.
the Board of Health was only taped once as well, so.
But that's another example. There are important things going on at the Board of Health, so,
Right.
you know.
Right, I think the ones that are finance and community preservation meet in here. I don't know where capital program's going to meet.
Probably upstairs.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thanks, Carol. Any other public comment tonight? All right, seeing none. New business for the board? Don't see anything there either. Approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Approval of minutes for the 27th of June, 2012, and 22nd of August, 2012. Any comments or changes to those?
No.
Seeing none, those are approved. Approval of payroll warrant for week ending 9 September 2012. Any comments, changes? Seeing none, that is approved. Approval of treasury warrant for 12 September 2012. Any changes, comments? Again, that is approved. Approval of pending contracts for 12 September 2012 as set forth on the spreadsheet identified as Exhibit 1, which exhibit is incorporated herein by reference. So we have a number of them tonight, Libby.
There are several tonight. The first one is a professional services contract with Town Administration and DPW with Woodard and Curran, not to exceed $7,000. And this is for support services relating to the permits we need from Natural Heritage for the Sheep Pond Road relocation. We already have funding set aside for this project that was encumbered from 2 years ago. We have a contract amendment for DPW with Vine Associates. It's not a money item. It's just extending the completion date of the contract for the Consu Springs Stormwater Management Project. We have a design contract with for the Cemetery Commission with BSC Group, $12,600, to develop a plan to expand the Newtown Cemetery, and this was CPC funding from 2011 annual town meeting. We have a supply contract for our island home with Nantucket Fish and Dairy, $24,900, 2-year contract. This is for some food supplies. As you can see there, it's a little weird, I know, fish and orange juice. And that's an island home budget item.
It's good to see they're eating fresh fish.
It's,
Looks
I
like a
know,
lot of
sounds
orange
weird.
juice, too.
Well, 2 years' worth of orange juice.
There you go, boy.
and then a couple of other island home things, professional services contracts. One is with ACS Service Bureau, Inc., $5,500. That's for Medicare billing services. And the other is with Kirkland, Albrecht, and Frederickson, $10,000, and that's preparation of the annual cost report for 2011. It runs in arrears.
Is that maybe related to some of the things we talked about before, where we submit cost data to the state and it impacts our reimbursement?
Yes. Yeah, it is
Okay.
directly related to
So
that.
it's an
And it's an
important contract.
It's an annual
Yeah.
requirement. It is, yep. And then lastly, a professional services contract with town administration, for town administration with VHB. This is the engineer for the Hummock Pond Road bike path, not to exceed $30,600. And this is for supplemental construction and engineering oversight services if needed or as needed for the project. We're going to try to keep the cost down by using in-house staff, but there are some technical things that we are going to need VHB for. So this is over and above their current contract.
Great. All right, any questions for Libby? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Great, thank
Aye.
you. All right, citizen departmental requests. We have a request for acceptance of a gift of $10,000 from the Nantucket County Sheriff to offset the cost of the fuel management system, which we heard about last week, I believe. Correct?
Motion to approve?
All right, there's a second?
Second.
All in favor?
It's nice to see the actual copy of the check in our package.
You know, this is probably what motivated right to approval. Number 2, request for approval of application of Rocco LLC, doing business as Pazzo for change of manager for annual all alcoholic beverages restaurant license from Kate Amodio, manager, to Barbara McAtee De Silvia, manager for premises located at 130 Pleasant Street. Any questions? We have the application.
Leave the table.
Okay. A recusal by Mr. Miller. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Leah is here for that applicant.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. Lori DeLea on behalf of Rocco LLC, doing business as Pazzo. We've submitted an application to change the manager at Pazzo. Barbara McAtee De Silva, who's here tonight, will be the new manager. She has been working as a general manager for Lola as well as Pazzo for the past couple of years. She's been living on the island for 30 years, and she also has experience in the restaurant business as well as in other fields in the management positions. I think the quality of these restaurants proves that she's doing a great job, and just request that you would approve the application. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, great. Questions? Right, do I have a-
Need a motion for approval?
Yep.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
All right, Bruce is making his way back. I'll read the paragraph that's next. The planning office requests for acceptance of release deed from Salvador J. Is it TC or Tessie? Techi. And Mary Ann E. Techi of property known as Parcel P, Atlantic Avenue, Parcel Q, Canonicus Avenue, Street, and Atlantic Avenue, and Parcel R, Canonicus Street, as shown on plan of land entitled Plan to Acquire Land for General Municipal Purposes in Nantucket, Mass., prepared for Town of Nantucket, dated March 5th, 2012, prepared by Charles W. Hart and Associates, Inc., and recorded with the Nantucket County Registry of Deeds as Plan Number 2012-23, and portions of parcels G, O, and T, Atlantic Avenue, as shown on plan, and also are a portion of Lot 1, as shown on plan entitled Plan of Land in Nantucket, Mass., dated October 24th, 1991, and recorded with said deeds as Plan 41-X.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. These two items, items 3 and 4, are related to each other. This is part of yard sale implementation. The first action that you're being asked to do is to accept a release deed from the Techis. They're actually one of the only people that I know of that actually paid taxes on a portion of paper streets. They did receive a deed in 1991. That particular deed is of questionable merit. However, they have paid taxes on the particular land since that time. And what they're doing is they're releasing areas of the paper street that were included in that deed that they really don't have adequate rights in. So the first action is they are releasing the rights outside of, basically away from their property. And that satisfies, that sort of closes out the town's taking action. And then the following item on item 4 would be to grant them the area immediately around their property as part of the yard sale process.
Okay. Questions for Andrew?
So they're releasing their rights to it, we're taking it, and then we're selling it back to them.
Some of it.
Right, we've taken the road, we've already filed an order of taking, and for the portion where there's essentially a conflict, they're releasing their rights in that extraneous piece. And then we are conveying back what was the road to them to add to their particular lot.
Gotcha.
Okay,
And,
sorry.
I'm sorry, the one section here that isn't, we're not conveying, we're granting them a license to keep their garden fence and their lawn in there?
Well, they're not releasing their rights to the garden on that particular property, so when we offer it for disposition, that parcel will have a little corner where there's a garden and a little bit of lawn.
Andrew, I'm looking at the highlighted section here,
Yep.
the triangle, that's what we're going to sell them back in the yard sale, right?
Correct.
But their edge of their lawn and their garden fence are actually in the piece next to it.
That's right, and when we've actually issued an RFP on those particular properties, so when you convey those out to whoever bids on them, they will receive those with that easement on that particular portion of the property. So it affects a little corner of the two properties,
Right.
but in a very minor way.
Could they could also bid on that, though, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Do I have a motion to accept
So moved.
the release deed?
Second.
All right, conversation, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Number 4, Planning Office request for execution of quitclaim deed for town-owned land known as Parcel S, Nonantum Avenue, Atlantic Avenue, and
Canonicus, yeah.
Thank you, Street in Nantucket, Massachusetts, as shown on plan of land entitled Plan to Acquire Land for General Municipal Purposes in Nantucket, Mass., prepared for Town of Nantucket, dated March 5th, 2012, prepared by Charles W. Hart and Associates, Inc., and recorded with Nantucket County Registry of Deeds as Plan Number 2012-23, pursuant to vote on Article 99 of 2011 Annual Town Meeting, which I think we've explained. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve? We approve the execution of the deed?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right. Town Manager's Report, wastewater planning update.
Okay, so we have a PowerPoint for you here, and we do have quite a bit of territory to cover with the update. We'll try to be concise, but we want to take any questions that you may have. And as an aside, the sewer planning work group met today for the first meeting. I did not stay for the entire time, so Kara or Rick, even if you guys have any report to make on how that went, that might be a little bit helpful as well. So I think Kara is going to do the general introduction to this item, and then consultants will take over.
As Libby mentioned, sewer planning has been extremely busy lately. We have started 2 committees, the Streets and Sidewalks Committee and the Sewer Work Group. The Streets and Sidewalks has been meeting for about a month or so. We walked the streets downtown where the Phase 2B sewer project is going, noted areas of interest and concern, and our next step will be to convey this information to the engineers and evaluate whether or not we're going to be making any changes. The sewer work group, as Libby mentioned, met this morning and had a really good discussion about where we are and where we're going to go with this process. And looking forward to working with them, using them as a reflection of an evaluation of the information as the consultants present it, and then as the CWMP progresses with coming to conclusions and so forth, vetting the different ideas that are brought forward. And with me this evening is Helen Gordon from Woodard and Curran, Tom Hazlitt. They will talk about the Phase 2B sewer project, and John Daniels is here to talk about the CWMP. So I will turn it over to Helen.
John Daniels. Before we start the presentation, I just want to give the board a big picture of and expand on what Kara had to say. The administration has asked us to report at least quarterly to the Board of Selectmen about these sewer projects. So this will be the first quarterly meeting now that the two contracts have been signed for the Phase 2B wastewater upgrade, rehab project and the CWMP project. All of the information relating to these projects is posted on the town's website under the DPW, and as things go on and reports and documents are generated, they will all be placed there. We expect the following to happen. On the Phase 2B project, once it goes to construction, obviously, just like on the Hummock Bike Path, there are going to be comments and questions and points raised during the course of the project. So as those come up, we expect to be here to answer questions through the administration to you folks on a regular basis, even though we will give you an update report quarterly. On the CWMP project, now that the Sewer Advisory Committee has been formed, there are a number of ways that you'll be communicated with. The administration will work with you directly. We'll do at least quarterly reports. The committee will come before you with its approach on how it wants to deal with these things. There is a schedule, which we have not posted yet because it's a draft schedule, but it'll be in a bar chart format. It'll look something like this. You've seen this before because when we made the presentation on the scope of work for the CWMP back in the spring, we presented it to you. All of these things will be available to you, so as the project moves along, any questions that arise can be pretty simply answered. The goal of the CWMP project is obviously to relook at what happened, almost 8 or 9 years ago now, and come up with a overall picture of where the town may want to proceed with its sewering down the road. So there's going to be a lot of discussion. There'll be a lot of questions about future financing and other things. So we will, be available to do all of that with you. And we're trying to give you as many avenues of communication as possible. With that, I'll turn the meeting over to Helen. Helen's going to talk to you about the Phase 2B project, which we're getting ready to go to construction with sometime this fall.
I just wanted to update you on what we've been doing over the last few months associated with Phase 2B. We had the contract signed, and one of the things that you're trying to do is really leverage the work that we're doing downtown with the sewer rehab and replacing water mains. We've been having meetings with both Kara and Bob Gardner to coordinate that work. And I can say that we had a recent meeting. We went over the design basis report. We've come to an agreement on how we're going to be going about the design on both the sewer and the water. And we've initially filed the notice of intent. We met with the Conservation Commission. We've gotten approval, and we just received copies of our order of conditions as late as yesterday. The Street and Sidewalk Committee meetings have been conducted. Kara referred to that earlier. And we're in a good spot to really understand what the local people are really looking for in this particular area. We've also submitted a notice, a notification form to the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and that was August 30th. This is another permit that requires some lead time to get in, so that's why we've done that. The tentative schedule right now is that bidding will begin in October. We're a little flexible with that. The construction anticipation will be started January is the plan. So if it moves 1 or 2 weeks from October 31st, we can still get in the bidding process. We will be scheduling a neighborhood meeting early October to make sure that we catch people who might be going off island for the winter prior to construction. And that's really where we are in Phase 2B. If there's any specific questions about the location, again, this is the map that we presented to you earlier in the spring of the streets that we're going to be doing work on. And the other thing that's completed is we had some additional streets added in comparison to the AECOM design that was done, Fair Street and Main Street, and the survey work has been completed, and we'll be getting the final information there. So we're pretty much on schedule there.
I have a question about the map.
Sure.
Fair Street. I know it goes different directions, but the section between Darling and Farmer, where Tattle Court dumps into that, how are those houses all going to get their pipes upgraded? Because I know some of those houses back in there have some constant root problems and everything else. And if we're going to do all of Fair Street, why aren't we doing those little sections there on each side of it?
The side streets, so the sections that are missing?
Well, there's a road right here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cattle Court. It doesn't look like a road, but it's a road, and those houses feed out here, and I don't know how they get, how do these houses get to there to there? The same thing here. I don't see
There,
it.
one of the, if you can look at the plan, there are other sewers in the side streets. So some of these houses are connected up to some of the side streets. So they're not connected up to Fair Street.
Tattle has a service line that runs down towards Fair and then heads down towards Farmer, and it all goes out Lyon. So we will have to take care of that section. When this map was prepared, it was unclear that Tattle was actually a public way, but
Right.
it actually is.
Okay, so we're going to extend that up, so, because I know that that's pretty steep downhill grade there, and I couldn't see how we're going to get it. And without, if we're going to tear the street up, it's not that much more to tear up
Exactly.
going up to Tattle and then up that road, so. Okay, that was the only thing I was wondering. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I just might mention the Streets and Sidewalk Committee, and Jack's in the back here. I made 2 of their tours, and Kara will note that it's an interesting, active group, and they got down to the detail of looking at specific drain pipes coming off houses into the street and how they might be upgraded or modified as part of this process to make sure they work, because right now they don't all do the right thing. So just to sort of let you know, there's an awful lot of detail on specifics, and Kara has a long list of those items we hope to take care of as part of the project. So. Excuse me.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that there's an article on the special town meeting floor in October 22nd for some additional money that Bob is looking for some water main extension. So that's part of the big picture here. We feel confident that with the $7 million authorization that we have, original $5 million plus the $2 million that was passed at the annual town meeting in April, that there's a sufficient amount of money to go ahead and do all the work on this project along with Bob's appropriation. So we worked very closely with him to make sure that that happens. And we haven't filed the application yet with the state, but we're in the process of doing that. We've talked to the state, and it appears that we're going to get all of the eligibility that we want for that 2% loan. So the administrative and financial part of this project seems to be in place. So the next thing I'd like to do is get into the CWMP update. All of you have seen the scope of work. We laid out the draft scope in October and November when we were preparing articles, when the town was preparing articles for town meeting. And then in the spring, we had the DEP come over here and spend a day with us, and we walked through the scope of work on the project. And I believe on June 27th, they approved, they sent a letter to the town administration approving the CWMP update, and the contract was brought before you and signed on June 27th. So what we've done, and if you want to get into a little detail on this, we can do that tonight, or we can do it in one of the working group sessions that we'll have on this project. We've taken the needs area map, which you have all seen. This is the map from the original. That's the plan from the original 2004 report. It shows the 2 town sewer districts and the needs areas that were determined by the CWMP in 2004. The thing that's important about that is in the report and in the MEPA certificate, which the town received approving that report in 2004, it specifically said that when the MEP, the Massachusetts Estuary Program reports were completed and the TMDLs were established for the embayments on the island, that the 2004 report had to be updated to reflect the criteria that are in those studies. So the MEP studies and the TMDLs for Nantucket Harbor, Hither Creek, and Long Pond, and for Nantucket Harbor have been established. The Nantucket one is only a draft, but we expect that to be final very shortly. Under this contract that we currently have, we're working with the town to get the Mass Estuaries folks to do the MEP study for Hummock Pond, which leaves, and Sagager Pond was already approved, and we're doing a little work to bring that pond off what's called the impaired waters list, so it will not have a TMDL in the future. The state has accepted the management plan that the town has decided to move ahead with on that pond, so that'll come off. The only pond left on the island, the great pond left on the island, will be Maya Comet. Maya Comet is essentially a freshwater ecology, so it doesn't fit the criteria for the MEP studies, so we're sort of leaving that out of the picture for the time being. So that, what we're doing is taking that plan, and we're now updating it and looking at what we consider needs areas on the island as of today. And so this other plan that I'm throwing on the table with you right now will show the study areas that we're currently working on. This is a very draft preliminary report. I realize we still only started this in July, so this is a very draft plan, but it shows that there are a number of other areas on the island because of either zoning changes, developmental changes, or other types of changes that are now being considered in the CWMP update as needs areas.
Do we take questions as we go, if that's okay? Or
Yep.
when something like Sagager Pond comes off the list, because we're still interested in maintaining the quality of the pond, the water quality, I'm just sort of curious, will we continue to, that our testing program will stay in effect for Sagager Pond?
Yes.
Just because it comes off one list doesn't mean we don't continue, right?
Right, there's an ongoing testing analysis program that the town has been conducting on all of its embayments since 1989. So the Natural Resources Department signs a contract every year and acquires laboratory assistance to do that. That's going to be an ongoing program. In fact, the TMDL program is going to require that the town continue to do that. So even though Sagager comes off as a TMDL, the town will still be testing that to make sure that nothing is impairing that pond to allow it to come back on again.
Okay, thanks.
So again, what we're doing, if you look at the 2 plans, and I know it's very difficult to do it in a short period in a meeting, but you'll see that we've expanded the planning areas that we're looking at. So what we're doing right now is, and let me track through the formal presentation here and just show you what we're doing. So we're redelineating the needs areas and the study map, and you see the draft of that in front of you. What we're doing is we're looking at input from various sources to do that. The state has a land use code, which is the baseline determination in all communities throughout the Commonwealth on what basic zoning requirements are needed in the community. So we're working with Andrew Vorse in the Planning Department. We're working with the Board of Health. We're working with the DPW and we're doing a GIS overlay to look at what has happened in terms of zoning, development, areas within the existing sewer districts that either are not served for one reason or another, areas outside the sewer district which have been voted at various town meetings since 2004. We're compiling all that data to find out what the actual number of lots are served right now, what the actual flows are from those lots, so we can determine whether the sizing of the Sconset and Surfside plants was correct when it was done in 2004. All of that information is being compiled right now, and based on that, we will then come back and tell you whether there's enough capacity in those treatment plants to service both the sewer districts as they've been expanded by town meeting votes and the needs areas that are determined as part of the study. We expect that some needs areas may come off because of the TMDLs. In other words, some of the TMDL information which you have heard from us in the past indicates that fertilizer management may control some of the nitrogen and phosphorus that get into your water courses and embayments. We also know that if we develop and expand a septic waste management plan in the town in companion with the sewer system project, that may have an effect on which areas have to be sewered. And the stormwater master plan, which is being developed through the DPW by another consultant, is going to have a big impact on which areas need to be sewered and not sewered. So that concentric circle chart, which we have up here too, which is basically showing you what all of the facets are of the CWMP update. Once we get all that information together and put it in a comprehensive document, we'll be able to tell you, hopefully, which areas need to be sewered and which don't. And as I said, that may change from what we thought was going to happen in 2004.
John, the green area on this, that's the harbor watershed, is that correct?
That's all the watersheds.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This outlined area here in green, isn't that didn't we have that designated at, I can't remember the exact term for it, but isn't everything here determined that it flows back into the harbor?
Correct.
The only reason I ask that is there's a large chunk of land, probably one of the last left on the island, that is up for sale, just came on the market recently. And it is developable, and if it is determined that it's going to be chopped up into house lots, maybe we should take a good hard look at it before we find that it's going to be a problem, because it's fairly close to Pulpus Harbor, and all that seems to drain down that way. So, but it's 233 acres, and I don't know what the zoning is out there, but there could be as many as 60 houses out there, right, Andrew? Something like that. 50, 60 with the wetlands and everything, probably. What are they, 3 acre, 5 acre? What is it out there?
It's 3 acre zoning.
Yeah.
There's some restrictions on development, but there could be some.
Yeah. So it might be something that we want to look at in the future. If
I
it's,
think wasn't the theory here that if you're in the harbor watershed and looking forward, we were to assume that lots would be developed in a zoning, the zoning characteristics were to be counted, if I'm saying that right. In other words, if you had a big piece of property, 200 acres, just take this one, and it could be divided under current zoning into 57 lots or whatever. I thought the idea was we assumed there would be 57 lots in our calculations. Going way back when. I mean, not to beat a dead horse here, but I'm sort of trying to respond to Bobby's question, because that was true throughout the area, not just the big ones, but there might have been a 5 acre piece that had the same issues.
Rosemary's actually taking a look at the parcel, taking a look at whatever environmental considerations there might be that would reduce the numbers, but she is giving a build-out number to the parcels.
okay, that's all I want to know.
Right, so, again, by working currently with each department, we're going to come up with that data. So just to follow through on this presentation up here. So we're going to the Board of Health records to look at all failures, all pump outs, all the information. That data is all going to be linked to our mapping process, and this basically explains the areas that we're looking into very carefully. Hummock Pond Cisco has come on there as a study area, as you see. We heard a lot of comments during the wastewater action planning stakeholders meetings last year about Cisco and Hummock Pond, and we've looked at some of the Board of Health data and some of the water quality data that's been generated by the town each year. And in fact, there are some areas in the Hummock Pond area that have serious pollution problems, and we're going to try to find out what the sources of those are and why it's occurring in those areas. So we're bringing that in as a study area. We're looking at all the other study areas that we did in 2004 to see if they need to be expanded or shrunk based on the TMDLs and, as I said, development data and other things. So the team under Rosemary Blackhair is working very carefully with these boards to try to dredge up all of that information, and we'll make it as current as we know is there. But we have to base it on existing zoning, and we have to base it on existing records, so we're trying to piece all those records together. So the water quality data, as we indicated, the town went out to contract this year again for this year's water quality. They actually put out a one-year contract with 2-year extensions if the vendor that's doing the work shows the town that it's doing it satisfactorily. So we have an ability to contract that out for 2013 and 14 also, so that we can keep moving through this process and not have any hiatus. In the meantime, the Board of Health has put the fertilizer regulations in place, which are effective in January 2013. The Board of Health recently voted to extend an administrative consent order to the folks in Nantucket, which we know are in fact in trouble in a lot of situations with their septic systems, and that administrative order may be available to be expanded to other areas in the community if we deem them needs areas. So there's a process in place now where a homeowner who has a failure can defer spending a lot of money on his septic system upgrade if there's a potential for sewers coming in within 5 years. So there are a number of things that we're working, again, with the Board of Health and others on to try to make this a comprehensive approach to this and not put a lot of people in jeopardy while we're doing it.
Can I just make it clear too, John, that the administrative consent order is technical failures? It's not a failure that would be essentially a functioning failure. I forget the word that we use, but
Correct.
it's the technical failure that's related to, for the most part, the change in law that moved the separation from 5 feet to 6 feet. So a lot of people that were in compliance and are in compliance with the state law are now technically out of compliance, and so we're giving them kind of a hold card until we figure out what we're doing in Nantucket in particular right now. But it's not as though their septic system has failed and leaching, into the.
I think that's important.
It is
because
very,
if it
yes.
has failed, we ought to move, and we're going to require them to fix it.
Exactly, yeah. So this is purely technical failure, and I don't think I'm wrong in saying that a lot of them are due to this change in law, that they were actually approved systems not too long ago when the law changed in 2010. So I just want to make sure that we're not just blanketing, failed systems, so.
Right. I think it's important to follow up the issue of getting the TMDLs or the estuaries project, for example, in Hummock Pond. If that has to be done before ACOs can be used in the Hummock Pond
Right.
area, we've got some timing issues, so we want to move along on that project and make sure it gets to that point. Otherwise, they're going to face some of the same problems that we faced in Nantucket, I think.
Right, and, well, it's a whole nother discussion, but I do, as you know, John, have a concern, too, about systems that were in compliance and now technically are out of compliance, that maybe we do some grandfathering as well, but that's a different discussion.
I just wanted to chime in on the Hammock Pond issue. Rosemary has done a lot of discussions with SMAST for the MEP evaluation, and we have $98,000 built into the funding for Woodard and Curran, and she has negotiated a reduced amount for the balance, which should have been funded by the state, but not having the money, we needed an additional $50,000, and we're going to be working towards that so that we can get that MEP study put into place.
I think we should assume somehow we can find that, so if we can get in the queue, that's important.
Right.
Okay.
We're working on it. So, again, unfortunately, the state has run out of money in that particular program, and the legislature hasn't shown a great interest in funding the addition. There are 19 embayments on the South Shore, and it just happens that Hummock Pond was one of those that hadn't gotten started when they ran out of money. So we've been looking to try to leverage the state to do that, and when they have come back and said they don't think they can do it in the near term, we've been talking to both private and other public parties to see if we can leverage that money. So we want to do it in conjunction with the CWMP, so that when we finish the CWMP, we also have finished the the MEP and the TMDLs for the Hummock Pond area.
Glad to
John,
hear that.
Are all needs area equal, or can they be prioritized according to their potential for harm? Or once something's in the needs area, it's
Well, the
pari passu with all other needs?
Right. The state has developed criteria for needs areas. So what we're going to do, and in the 2004 report, the needs areas that were based on the state criteria then were laid out, and the treatment plants were sized to handle those needs areas. Now that the TMDLs have been established and we're working on the one for Hummock Pond, we have to go back and take a revised look at those needs areas. And as we said in the Hummock Pond case, because of the potential for a TMDL there and the fact that water quality testing is showing that there are some degrading conditions, we may add that to the pot. Can we actually go in those needs areas and say, this is number 1, number 2, number 3? Yes, we can. And for instance, and I'm, again, just using Nantucket as an example, in the TMDL, it was shown that there was human DNA in the samples that were taken in Hither Creek and Nantucket Harbor. The only place you can get human DNA in that process is through septic systems, because that's all that there is out there, or illegal direct outfalls or whatever into that. In some of the other areas, human DNA wasn't found. Maybe animal DNA was found, or there are other conditions, fertilizer or stormwater, first flush stuff on stormwater that shows that this is what's degrading those areas. So if we took a look at the areas today, we could probably say Nantucket is number 1 to deal with because of that. The problem with Nantucket is, as some of you recall and some of you don't, when the Surfside plant was sized, Nantucket wasn't included. Even though Nantucket's a needs area, the recommendation at the time was to build another plant somewhere in the Nantucket area just to handle the Nantucket flows. Well, what's happened is estimating over the years has shown that that's going to be a very expensive proposition. So what we're doing as part of the study is looking to see if the Surfside plant has the capacity through an interceptor sewer arrangement or something similar to that to bring the flows from Nantucket into Surfside to do that. So if we establish needs areas and Nantucket's number 1, then the first project we're going to recommend to you is probably going to be how do we get the flows either to a treatment plant in Nantucket or from Nantucket to Surfside to take care of them. If Hummock Pond may be 2, or it may be 7, Somerset may be 3, or we'll, as the study goes on and we gather the data, we'll come up with a list for you folks to chew on, and we'll see how we're doing. We're trying to do it apolitically and as scientifically as possible. Down the road, there may be other considerations which the board, the administration have to consider when we look at that. But we'll give you the raw data and our recommendations from an engineering point of view with cost estimates, and then the town is going to have to make these decisions. We're hoping that the Sewer Advisory Committee is going to be helpful in, presenting that information to the board, acting as a sewer commissioner.
Just, if I may, over what period of time will we work our way through from the highest priority to the least important priority?
Well, this is an
Roughly.
18-month study, and at the end of the study, we will have the recommendations and the priorities and the cost estimate, the rough cost estimates at the planning
But
stage.
in terms of implementation, over what period of time will all this be accomplished?
This is a planning document. The state gives you a 20-year planning period to work from this document. So it's up to the town to make that decision.
Okay.
The board made a decision about upgrading the Surfside and Sconset plants based on the last report, and you were actually under administrative consent orders to do that anyway. You're not under any consent orders right now. There's no regulatory process pushing you through it. This is strictly a town process right now. However, the TMDLs will become a regulatory program as time goes on. So we'll sort of pull all this stuff together and give you an idea of where we think you need to head within this 18-month period.
And give Bruce some background too, and Kara's probably jumping in to do the same. When we began this, it began as a discussion of the Monomoy area and whether we would extend there, and it became clear that with the new data that we do have from the estuaries, that it was time to take a hard look at the plan. And so we are in process of doing that with the information that we now have. And I would hope that we can get all the information. As John's saying, it's going to be a little bit of a trick in certain areas, but we do have a lot more information than we did when this plan was created, correct?
I agree.
Yeah.
And what I see as one of the most important pieces of work that's going to come from this process is the list of construction projects that need to be generated to protect the island, and giving those projects a construction cost, and then looking at the impact on the sewer enterprise fund for this construction. There's going to have to be a component where the board talks about how our construction projects going to be funded. The last project was a third, and a third. Is that going to continue? So there's a number of things down the road that are going to have to be vetted and discussed.
And part of the whole conversation, of course, when we got to financing is when we really did get, I think, a little bit of religion in terms of just what the plan looked like, because we are putting a huge cost possibly on individuals, whether they be taxpayers or whether it be by betterment. So we wanted to make sure that we had the priorities correct. And we wanted to make sure that going forward, we were aware of certain things, like what we've just done with septic in an area versus what the new cost is going to be. There's a lot of trade-offs. So this is going to give us a little bit more of a roadmap than I believe we had with an outdated plan.
So we're hoping to give you some clarity so that it's going to be easier to make these decisions in the future. So this little presentation tonight, which you have in your work packets, if you follow it through, it basically, it's a logical progression on where we want to head. So, and then again, all these things are being considered in the scope of work. I'll just take a couple, for instance, where we put in our budget some work, a fee and a scope of work to do an energy efficiency and conservation program at the wastewater treatment plants and pumping stations. We'll be refining that scope of work with George Aronson to make sure that we're coordinating our efforts with the Energy Office and how we're going to proceed on that. So all of these things are being, are being considered as part of this plan. We're working with the health director not only on the things we also talked about, but there was a septic waste management plan that was included in the 2004 Earth Tech report, which has never been fully implemented. In conjunction with sewering, obviously the areas of the island that aren't going to be sewered need to be managed properly so that septic systems don't cause a problem outside of the sewered areas. We're going to try to strengthen that plan and move it forward. And you can just go around this chart and ask a question on any of those areas, and there's some scope of work in the CWMP to make that all join together. So it is complicated. That's why we are working with the administration, with the DPW, with the other various town departments, and now we have a sewer advisory committee to sort of march their way through this with us. Hopefully when we come to you, we can be rather concise about the information we present to you and give you logical reasons why, as sewer commissioners, you need to take votes to move ahead. But we'll just have to see how that unfolds. Right now, I don't have a plan in place to tell you what that's going to look like.
Okay.
So again, this is just a summary sheet of the two projects we talked to you about tonight. And questions tonight are fine, and questions anytime are fine. We'll be happy to.
I have one more question. Out at Monomoy, are you evaluating the possibility of modifying the jetty as a way to improve the water quality in the harbor?
One of the model runs, which we asked SMAS to do, in fact, last year, and it's included in the January 24th, 2012 report, which we wrote about the TMDLs, was to do a determination of whether fixing the jetties, raising the jetties, doing something with the jetties might have an impact on the harbor. The answer to that was yes, that, remedial work on the jetties that was never completed by the Corps back in the 1950s could be a generator of enough flow and, velocity in the harbor to take care of some of the aspects of the TMDL program. So we've been working with Dave Franzuto when he was a Marine superintendent, and now that he's the emergency management manager, and we're working with the Natural Resources Department to see if we can move ahead with Homeland Security and some of the other agencies that are basically in control of that to help bring that into this equation.
So that's in motion.
Yes,
Thanks.
it is. In fact, we're asking for help from the politicians, both at the state and federal level, to see if there's a way to move money in various Corps of Engineers accounts to support this effort.
Another route to attack this from is from the transportation point of view, and the safety issue. That jetty, that jetty used to be out of the water at high tide, and it's not anymore. And there's always boats going up on it, and people have drowned on it. I know the Army Corps moves at a snail's pace, but somehow or another they found $4 million to look for unexploded ordnance in Tom Nevers, which, did they find
Right.
any?
Yeah, you'd think the jetties might be a higher priority.
In my mind it is, but,
But I think John's right. This is a political issue, and we've got to maybe be more active politically to help facilitate
Yeah.
that kind of action.
but what I'm getting at is that they move at a snail's pace, so we should, even though we're not anywhere near done with this plan, we should start at least that part of it, because it's going to take years to get them to come around to do anything.
Well, we have Representative Madden and Senator Wolf out at the county fair Saturday, so.
Yeah, I believe Dave's, at our coastal management
Keating
plan,
would like
Dave
to be
said that.
reelected, so we got some,
I think that Dave said that at our coastal management plan that they had sent a letter to Senator Kerry, who
yeah,
was.
I mean, that's the kind of thing we have to be serious about.
Right.
And
Right.
We helped them compose a letter
Right.
to start that process. Yeah.
Right.
Right. All right. Any other questions?
Hey, I might just mention the committee referred to met for the first time today, and I think it's fair to say it will be an active, interested group. They all have some history and knowledge, and you could just tell in the course of the meeting that there will be a fair amount of involvement, so
So
it should be good.
those meetings will be posted, because maybe once in a while I'll jump in
I
there
think
too.
you ought to come. They're public meetings, so, yeah.
Stir it up. All right. Thank you, John, very much. No other further questions. We are, as we noted in the beginning of the meeting, we are not going to be taking the next agenda item. Libby, is there anything else for town manager report?
There's just one item I wanted to mention to you, and it's a bit last minute. We've been encouraged by the CPC chair, Community Preservation Chair, to submit an application for funds for the portions of the 20 South Water Street rehab and renovation project that would be subject to be able to be funded by CPC. The deadline for the application is Friday, and thanks to Erica, we've started to put an application together. It won't be entirely complete. The chair said, don't worry about it, just please try to get something in. We explained that there may be some issues with the flood map changes with that particular project, but the idea was try to get the application in anyway. Regardless, if the funding is approved and we ended up not doing the project, then it goes back to the pot. And if it doesn't get approved, then it doesn't get approved. But it's a project that definitely fits the criteria, the certain portions of it. There are some historic aspects to it, plus elevators in historic buildings can be funded by CPC funding. So we're getting the application together. I just wanted you to know, because we had not brought any projects to you until now. So that's in the works. And
That's
again,
good to hear. It's nice to be able to use some of those funds for community and town projects.
Yes,
so.
it's a extremely detailed application, as it probably needs to be, but we're doing our best. Erica is doing her best to get it all together, and I thank her very much, because she's pretty much had to drop everything to get it going. In any case, I just wanted to mention, so that's it.
Okay. Selectmen reports, comments, adoption of October 22nd, 2012 special town meeting warrant. Again, this is just to move it forward. This is not to make our recommendations.
Correct. Do you have it? Do you guys have it in front of you? It was sent to you later today.
The warrant?
Yep.
Final warrant?
Yep. It's been reviewed by town council and had all the other review that it needs. There's a couple of changes that have happened since I sent it to you.
Yeah, the updated one I have, but does
Okay.
everybody have it?
So one quick change in discussing with the finance director, we'd like to move Article 1 to actually be, I can't even figure out the number, but before the current Article 4. It's just a move for the
Okay.
purposes of whether or not things get approved.
Okay.
So minor change.
Okay,
Article 9, as you can see, planning director has asked that we remove that, thank you. And so it's shown there, but it's stricken.
okay.
So that'll come out, and the articles subsequent to that have been renumbered.
We talked about that last week, so.
And I think the only other item I wanted to bring to your attention is the article about the office moves, Article 6. I forwarded you an email from town council's office with some suggested alternative wording to that article, which both versions are shown there. Do you guys have that? It's
Yeah.
Article 6.
Yep. I just saw it, so I'm sure to find it in a second. I have the email.
It's basically, the idea was to more confirm that there's been a determination to move the finance offices from 16 Broad and 22 Federal to 37 Washington, and to more seek the town meeting kind of endorsement or agreement with that.
Okay.
And the reason for that was not to give more credence to the bylaw than necessary? I'm trying to say that gently, Libby.
Yes, I think
So we
that's
know what we're doing here?
probably a diplomatic way of saying it. The suggestion was that, in the opinion of town council, that bylaw is not binding.
Thereby authorizing, I'm reading her email here, and I think that that's the important word. They're confirming and thereby authorizing the decision made by the town to move the office, rather than essentially making a directive of any
Yeah.
sort.
But if town meeting decided they did not want to support that article, is the implication that we could go forward anyway?
I think-
Isn't that the underlying statement here?
I believe it is, yeah.
Okay.
The town council.
Let's just be
opinion.
open about
Yep,
what that is.
Yep.
So otherwise, the first draft,
Mm-hmm.
I think, was meant to imply that town meeting did have an absolute or a clear statement of responsibility. I'm not sure how to say that, Libby. And if they voted no, we couldn't override it. I think that's why the change is being made. Am I saying that correctly?
I think so.
Okay.
I didn't have a chance to get into detail with this with town council today, but based on the email, I guess I would conclude that.
Yeah.
Do we have to have an article at all?
Well,
We already know the sense of town meeting, I think, and I think to the best of my knowledge, we're doing our best to accommodate it, circumstances permitting, and we
Right.
may, along the way, have to deviate at times, and with that ultimate goal in mind. So if that's the case and it's not binding, maybe we should just take it off.
Well, that's worth discussing, because if it's something that we aren't bound to honor
Right.
and might find ourselves in a position of not honoring, why take the risk? I mean, I'm not sure how the result's going to be. I have no idea.
Right, and you know,
So it's worth understanding that, I think.
I think Bruce makes a really good point. Oh, we need a tape change. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Bruce makes a great point here, which only, to me, resonates more because of our recent FEMA discussions. Now, I know nothing immediate is happening there, but oftentimes it indicates that things happen that we can't predict necessarily in terms of changes, and it would be very difficult for us to be making sound policy decisions, cost-wise and otherwise, if we are not able to, on occasion, deviate from what might be the general goal or purpose. So, and that whole discussion, the FEMA discussion, is going to turn this whole conversation about town offices, frankly, a little bit on its head. So I just kind of prep us all for that one, because, with the changes in the hazardous flood zone line, it makes a lot of it creates a lot of questions about the feasibility financially or otherwise of, improving those properties. So, again, I think all of those things swirling would make me feel more comfortable to not even include it necessarily, so
Should I make can I make a motion to that effect?
I would like.
But could we just be clear on what that means? I think, so we understand, I think I'm likely to vote for it, but there are citizens who take a different approach, and we need to understand that in moving forward, which sometimes you have to do that, but let's be clear about that.
One of our other goals, I think, though, was to try to have a streamlined town meeting, and this could turn into a lengthy debate, and for something that the town meeting has already spoken, and it won't be binding or hasn't been binding and won't be binding in the future. So.
Right.
Right, that's why I'm not sure
Yeah.
I disagree, Bruce, but I like to be clear about what we're doing.
Right, and again, buried in this conversation are the conditions of the buildings, which are really administrative decisions. And so, again, even further, I think that this is, and safety concerns, and handicapped accessibility concerns, and things of that nature that I think we have an obligation to deviate, as Bruce, I think, put it, from the general sense of town meeting to make sure that these things are rectified in the short term. Right? So do I have a motion? Bruce all right, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, all those in favor?
What, the motion is to pull Article 9?
6.
Six.
6.
And again, I
Look
think
again. There we go. Okay.
just to be clear, we're going through this exercise because we believe the existing bylaw is not binding, and therefore at least as I think about it, going to town meeting is a nullity. I'm not sure that's the right phrase,
Because
but it
even if
doesn't
they
have a
tell us,
meaning.
even if they tell us no, we're still going to
Yeah,
do
and
it.
we may feel obligated, as Patty says, for a number of reasons, like we have to move forward for good and valid reasons. And so I think I support being upfront about what we're doing.
Right.
That's sort of my point of view here.
And personally, I really believe that when you get to questions about safety and accessibility, those are important concerns and high priorities, so,
We have to do the best with what we have.
right.
So,
And I don't think there's any doubt, at least in my mind, that we all recognize, and the committee that's working on it recognizes, that the long-term objective is to keep as many jobs as possible downtown and move back jobs whenever possible, subject to the limitations.
Right.
So.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you. We move to Article 6. Anything further?
So Article 6 is out.
Yep.
I don't think there were any other,
The highlighted stuff in yellow
Changes.
are going to be changes? There was a
Um,
couple things I saw there.
in Article 17, there was a couple of blanks, that there was a real estate conveyance for 33 New Street. I have that information now, so those blanks will be filled in. And I think those were the only other.
I looked at the earlier one. This is the addendum. It's already been changed. Sorry.
So next steps would include you all adopting the document tonight with the changes that we just talked about. It'll get published in the paper, I think, next week. FinCom public hearing has already been scheduled for Monday, September 24th, and proceeding with the rest of the timeline. You make your recommendations, comments, whatever, to the articles on, I believe, October 3rd, and then the warrant gets to the printer, gets mailed out, and we start on October 22nd.
Okay. All right. Any further conversations, discussion on the adoption of the warrant to send to Finance Committee? Do I have a motion then to take that action?
I'll be happy to so move.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great.
Thank you. And just
Thank-
so the board members know, FinCom is meeting tomorrow at 4. They're going to be reviewing fiscal 13 budgets that are affected by here, that are affected in here, Island Home, Sconset, Wanacomit. Is that it for tomorrow?
Just, could I ask a question about that? Because I think some of these items we haven't seen yet. And
No,
they're
you haven't.
Going to the Finance Committee, and there may be impacts on the general fund in some way. I don't know for sure yet,
We haven't
I
even
get
gotten
a-
that far yet, but
but I've sort of heard that and,
Yep.
floating around. And I am a little concerned about I think we should see those and be clear on our actions before they get too far at the Finance Committee and we could find ourselves with differing points of view. So I'm just want to share that with the board. I don't know how you deal with that.
Yeah, there's lots of moving parts to this, and there's obviously timing issues, but we'll meet tomorrow and figure out when we can get review by
Good.
you, by the board.
Okay, great. All right, next item, review of Massachusetts Department of Revenue Financial Management Review of the Town of Nantucket. We received this in July, and I believe we've all had a chance to take a look at it. I think it's pretty straightforward. There's some recommendations that I would embrace and some others I wouldn't, frankly. I think it's kind of it's nice to have an independent agency come and take a look at how you're doing things and maybe give some thoughts. It's not always the case that they understand fully about the operations, frankly, and that becomes painfully clear in sections, but...
I think you're being very gentle in some sections.
But ultimately, there's some merit and good ideas, and I didn't want to have the report come forward without a chance for us to discuss it. So we're here to sort of make our comments on that if you'd like. So I open it up for board comment.
Yeah.
I have a board question.
Sure.
In the normal course of things, how do we deal with this? Does somebody look through and say, these are the things we think we should embrace, and these are the ones that we think we're going to set aside, or is that what we're supposed to be doing right now?
Well, personally, I think that these things are timing, there's timing to this. We just went through a pretty thorough evaluation of our own financial management, and ultimately, we're still implementing changes that evaluation suggested, and I think that to me is the higher priority. I appreciate the Department of Revenue taking a look at this, but they take a look at the big picture. It's not just the finance department. It's about town meeting. It's about a number of things. The selectmen meetings even. So there's a lot here. Whether or not through the processes that we in our day-to-day operations go through, there's a certain amount that's administrative. We might ask Libby and her staff to take a look at the administrative recommendations and essentially see if there's anything there that they would recommend incorporating. That might be a logical approach. And then there's some policy changes that we may take a look at. I don't think tonight is the time that we're going to be making any of those changes, but as time goes on, I would encourage us to review them and maybe within the context of our policy role, work with town administration to see if there's anything that would be helpful. It might be worth our while to send this also to our contractor who did do the evaluation of the finance department. I mean, there's some specifics, if Libby would think that was a good idea, but...
Madam Chairman,
Yeah.
one quick suggestion. Maybe one approach would be to, not in a lot of detail, but just quickly go through each recommendation, and I can let you know now what either has been discussed at the administrative level so far, or what, we might want to spend a little more time either tonight or at some other time, or bring others in to discuss. Because some of this stuff has already been talked about by the FinCom, and I think they probably have a particular viewpoint of some of these items, but if that, do you want to do that?
Yeah, do you mind taking us through it? Okay.
Item number 1, review Nantucket Town Charter. Actually, the Cabinet had a bit of a discussion about this recently, and we were thinking perhaps we could undertake something like that. There are a few things that need to be updated because they've weren't properly inserted into the charter to begin with. Once the charter was already adopted, it was amended later, and they weren't really put in the proper place. Things like that, technical corrections need to be done anyway. And we obviously we're having trouble getting together a town government study committee. Hardly anybody has applied. I know there is someone here who's diligently applied, but it doesn't seem to be a very popular committee. Maybe we need to try harder to get people to apply, or maybe the board needs to undertake it. I think there's an objectivity thing that is at issue there, but administratively, the cabinet wouldn't mind if you wanted us to go through the charter and make some administrative recommendations.
Sounds like a good start.
Item,
Consensus on that?
Yeah, a little bit on the, going back to the town committee, I always felt part of the problem was it was sort of such a broad charter, and we might find more receptivity to getting people to help us out if we narrow the focus, for example, in the way you're outlining it here, then we know what we're about. Otherwise, it was like opening up the world. So there may be ways to combine some of these
Break it
things,
up.
Libby.
sure, maybe the cabinet could even just take a stab at identifying the items that we think maybe could be taken up by a committee.
And then I think we
like
could find
specific-
people who would be interested enough in that
Okay.
town governance, because it is an important thing.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Rick.
You know, like the administrative changes, the technical stuff, staff could do. And then restructuring town meeting and that kind of thing, we could get a committee to
Yeah, I
look
think
at.
we'd find some are easily administrative, Bobby, and some are not. And
Right. Well, and that whole question runs into some of the other recommendations. For instance, the next one would have to be a charter change if we were to,
Penny, I think your original comments were helpful because we've had a lot of reports lately. If you go back to the Finance Department, the Abrahams report, we've
Right.
had the state in here.
Right.
We've had a forensic audit of one part of our government. So we've got a lot of things floating around. Some have similar type recommendations and some don't.
Yeah.
So how you bring this all together, I think a lot of this takes time to digest. And some of it's a lot easier to digest.
right. I mean, in keeping with that, I mean, number 3 to me is just doing what we're doing already with respect to our report in implementing the changes, you know. So the fiscal management review we just had, right? I mean, I think that's what it was, you know, it felt like that was what it was.
Patty, exactly. So I think some of these are sort of ongoing things, and Libby, as you go through them, I'm sure you can point that out to us, but some are not ongoing things.
Right.
Right. I mean, even the capital, I'm getting ahead of you. I know.
Actually, I was going to ask if we go back to number 2.
Okay.
Just, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but with regard to the Finance Committee, I mean, I think one of the most important things they do is evaluating the warrant articles. And I think the community relies upon them. And I think to take that out of the process would be a horrible mistake.
Bruce, I agree, and I think the Finance Committee, that came up at the last meeting,
But
and, you know, so.
That being said, I agree with you in the extent that the citizen articles should be reviewed by the Finance Committee, but I think the zoning articles should all go to the planning board. And why does the FinCom have to oversee them after the planning board?
But Bobby, largely they don't, unless something pops up that they thought was extraordinarily important. But basically, they have not spent a lot of time. Andrew reviews them. It takes one afternoon.
Yeah, but even one afternoon in the course of 45 meetings in a 2-month schedule is one afternoon less that, I mean, it's a I went, the first year I ran for selectman, I went to almost every one, and I was amazed. I thought,
The level of detail is
oh,
pretty extensive.
and just the number of sheer meetings that they have.
Right.
You know, so if they could eliminate one.
But I don't want us, I mean, Matt wants to say something. I don't want us to get down a road where we're debating these. I mean, that's what
Right.
I'm trying to avoid a little bit tonight. So, Matt?
Hi, Matt Mulcahy, Finance Committee. Just to clarify that about the Finance Committee with this report, is that they interviewed me for the process, and there was a feeling that they conveyed that around the state, the Finance Committee does not deal with anything that doesn't involve an appropriation. So their philosophy on this was trying to limit the number of meetings that the Finance Committee meets, which on the surface is not a bad idea. But I think on this island, it's a little impractical, because Bruce, you made the point about how many proper venues can citizen articles get vetted, and there really aren't any, and the Finance Committee is kind of the catch-all. And for transparency in government, it does provide a useful function. And I think the committee feels that. That's really what I'm leading up to, because we did talk about that at our August 23rd meeting, and there was pretty much a consensus that the way the process is working now, the committee feels to keep it going. My personal feeling is that if we can streamline it and make things more efficient, we'll certainly strive for that. So any suggestions that you may have, or as administration may have, I will listen. So That's all. I know, and Bobby, on your points on zoning, we pretty much have done that. We do not get involved in zoning. What we will do as a committee will approve the planning board's recommendations.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Libby, I'm sorry to.
Oh, on number 2, I was just going to say that I think the FinCom has started talking about this, and I think they are rather, what's the word, adamant that their role pretty much remain as is.
Yeah.
If you go back over time, it seems to
It's
work
nice to have a
pretty
third,
darn well.
an impartial party to review these things.
3, align local action with adopted financial management policies. I think this is an ongoing item, and I think we've started to discuss it and do this on an annual basis.
I just wanted to touch base on one item that's in here. One of the things they were looking at is 5 years of information. So one of the ones I highlighted was on page 10, the last line in the first paragraph, making sure the town put 1% towards capital projects from real estate as well as local revenue. We have done that over the past 2 years. So they're taking snapshots of 5 years. So in some cases, these are resolved. The second part tailors right into number 4, where we're at right now, is developing capital
Right.
plans.
Right, that's what I was jumping there and stopped myself, but, you know,
Yeah,
I hadn't thought about the 5-year snapshot, but you're absolutely right. We're catching ourselves
Yeah,
here.
because since I've been on the board, we have been doing that, so.
Right,
So without going into lots of detail, 4 is in the works.
yep,
Which, just to, for the public, develop comprehensive capital improvement program and long-range funding plan. And by the way, for people who may not have it handy, this report is on the town website. Number 5, clarify general fund operating budget warrant article. This requires some additional discussion, I think, internally before we would make any kind of a recommendation here. I think we feel generally pretty comfortable with the way the warrant article is set up at the moment.
yeah, and I would see it as really harmful to have a line item discussion on internal budgets. Plus, ultimately, the FinCom conversation that they were trying to get away from actually does this piece.
And the line item
For the
budget is
public.
printed on the website.
Right.
So if anybody wants to see it, they
Right.
can.
And the microscope is put on at the FinCom level, and the discussion happens at that point, and it's open to the public, and, you know, that to me is much more serviceable than the whole town meeting, frankly.
And Greg Tiffin and I spoke with John Giorgio with Town Council when he was on Island. If we were to do what's recommended in here, it would be restrictive. So if anything, we're looking at a hybrid between the two that we've been discussing for the past 2 years.
It actually seemed like a strange recommendation.
Sure
to me,
did.
frankly.
Yeah. 6, merge information technology functions under the town manager. Those functions basically already are under the town manager. There are a couple of recommendations in here that maybe we didn't get it clear enough when we were meeting with the Department of Revenue representatives. Because one of the things it says here is the town manager plans to merge the town's various school, public safety, and municipal IT operations into a consolidated department sometime this summer. In no way was there a plan. I think that when Greg and I met with him, we said it was a possibility. It was, you know, some towns do it like that. We were thinking about what or if to do with IT differently than it's done now. This is a bit,
Presumptuous.
yeah. In any case, we are still working on getting a more comprehensive information technology strategic plan, and it's hard with lack of resources, so we're just kind of struggling along with it at the moment. Number 7, consolidate water departments. That also, I think, is something, and I know that Bob wants to make a comment about this, is something that wasn't maybe explored quite comprehensively enough by the department, because there already is some discussion about merging the water departments.
Thank you. Bob Gardner, Wanacoma Water. Both water commissions have reviewed this report, and quite frankly, with them and me, its credibility is subject. And I say that because these are fairly broad-reaching recommendations, and yet the DOR never took the opportunity to talk to the commissions, talk to myself, talk to the staff. A 4-minute phone call was our interaction with them to determine how e-billing works and how that could be applied to the town. So we have some issues with the fact that they make these kind of statements without taking the due process of seeing how things work. Both commissions are committed to combining Wanacommet and Sconset. There's absolutely no question. Town council has reviewed that. He has drafted special legislation and has determined that special legislation is the way that should happen. And the commissions are still wrestling with some things like debt, assets, and so they feel those questions should be answered before a merger plan is put forth to the town, and exactly the form of that merger. There's some, the factual thing, the 8,000 accounts, we have 6,000 accounts, that, due process would have determined that. But I think we've put a lot of effort into our billing and collection system and the efficiency of that, both for water and sewer. And the checks and balances have been vetted more times than I can count by both our own auditing firm of Burke and Lamb, by Powers and Sullivan, and it works well. And to have a division of billing and collection like this would just serve to be a real hindrance to being able to provide high level of quality customer service to the ratepayer and to other folks that are dealt with it. So we think that the commission is wide open to efficiencies, and the staff is, and we've worked hard to get those efficiencies, and it's just a little disappointing that the DOR didn't take the time to, while they're on island, to make an appointment to come talk to us.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for coming in. Thanks.
Thank you.
And to the commissions. Next, Libby.
Number 8, unite all finance department offices under one roof. Yes.
Yes.
Working on it. 9, establish annual departmental goals. This probably is a good idea. We have, I would say, more informal goals than specifically developed in the manner in which they describe here. So that is something that town administration can work on. 10, reevaluate use of public funds for private purposes. We have talked with town council about this one, and in the case of the Health and Human Services funding, for example, that is not a violation of the anti-aid amendment. That's okay. The Athenaeum, I don't think we have really talked to town council about, but I find it a little hard to believe after all these years that we've been giving them above and beyond the statutory amount, that it's not legal.
Well, we can check into it, but
On this item, Greg and I did talk to him while you're on vacation, so I apologize for that. With the Athenaeum, we're legally required to provide
That's what I
them
thought Molly
municipal
was-
funds, and
right.
if we don't, we need an exemption from the state. So this is a state-mandated increase every year. So in number 10, we're not against the anti-aid amendment whatsoever in any of these services. So this is one I wanted to make sure was addressed tonight, so that the public didn't start a different topic about
Again,
canceling
it's one of those areas
services.
of this that you
We're
sort of
not.
say, what the heck is this
Right.
Yeah.
for? It's kind of
Thinking.
Yeah.
crazy.
and I don't know, to have the Athenaeum, which I doubt they talked to, again, kind of codified by name. I
I
mean,
like number 11.
let's go on.
Number 11 is certainly something to strive for.
Well, we should
Reduce
read
number
it
of
so
town
people know
meeting-
what we're having.
Andrew,
We got
you still
rid
in the room? No, he left.
Bobby, we got 2 out tonight.
Yeah, we did our share today.
Yes, you're making
It's
strides.
reduced number of town meeting warrant articles, just in case the public isn't aware of what we're so happy about here.
It's also advocating to have a spring town meeting and a fall special town meeting
Oh, good.
regularly.
We're listening.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Does it have to be the case that we have our primary town meeting in the spring?
Yes.
And the re-
Yeah,
Is that
because
by
of fiscal
statute?
year.
Okay.
You have to have your budget in place, right? Isn't that what?
Yeah.
It helps with the election process.
Yeah, for a community that has so much of its business conducted in the summertime, it really is awkward to have it so close to the summer season.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Okay.
12, post-town meeting warrant online. Would love to do this. This requires a charter change. So that can, something we can be.
I think in 20 years, we'll be there.
No, this came up a couple of years ago.
I don't think
because
there's
money
enough-
involved, and
Yep.
Enough people in this town yet who are
Because they mean
internet savvy.
Yeah, no, I understand. And there may be hybrids, Bobby, who knows? I mean, there might
I'm
be some
thinking
things we
there'd
can
be people without their little thing to hold up that would be, yeah.
But only online, no advertising.
I think
no
this
sending
is,
it out.
yeah. so
No
we don't
printing
print
it, no
up.
put it in the paper, no
So
mailing to everyone.
We should probably explain that. It wouldn't be sent out anymore. You'd just get it online. But we still would obviously have copies available and stuff. 13, allow town manager to sign vendor and payroll warrants. This one, if you guys wanted to do something like that, or if it needed to change, charge change, that's fine, but
Takes all of
quite
10
honestly,
minutes.
It's such a minor,
Yeah. And you look at the
Action.
airport situation, you sort of say, well, let's just stay where we are.
yeah. 14, I'm sure you probably know, this is my favorite recommendation of the
I
report.
think we had a source identified.
Well, I think we should talk about this, because, we met through the course of the summer, every 2 weeks. We didn't have any extremely long meetings. What they say in here makes a lot of sense. We could meet every 2 weeks, with exception of the months coming up to town meeting, when we probably would have to meet every week as need be. But we can always schedule a meeting in between the 2 weeks if something comes up that we have to do, or we get a heavy workload. But the last week, we were in and out of here in 45 minutes. Tonight, we had a few more reports that we had to go through, but I'd rather have one long night than, to be honest, personally, that's me, so.
It'll be an interesting discussion.
There was a time when the board had workshop meetings. I don't know what they meant. I assume they were public. But are there instead of having 2 meetings like this, the formal structured meetings with the TV cameras, would it be possible to have an alternate meeting where we had a workshop and we could kind of roll up our sleeves and range a little bit with an agenda, of course, and open to the public?
Well, we can mix it up a little bit more.
I think those are possible, even if they're televised. I mean, you don't have to worry about that so much, but you can have a session where you agree that the public doesn't have the same participation options. That's one way you can call it a workshop. Then you're meant to talk amongst each other. But there
I
are
think
lots of things to deal with there.
And I think as we get further into the sewer questions, we're going to want that. But that's one of the places where we did it before, is on sewer rates, where we were able to, in a public forum, have more in-depth conversations with the consultants. I would agree with Bobby. I'm intrigued with the whole biweekly selectmen's meeting enough to say, let's put it on the agenda, on an agenda, and have a conversation about it. So if you're open to that, I think that would be the next step.
Sorry, what was that? Next step? More
We're gonna-
discussion later?
We're going to put on the
Put it
agenda.
one
just-
night and discuss.
Okay.
So number 15?
15, accept town collector local option statute. Again, I'm not sure this is something that, things have happened that would require us to do something like this. We would probably have to think about what additional resources this might require. So we'll have some internal discussion about this, and we can maybe make a recommendation to you all about that one. 16, complete implementation of the contract management module. It's in the works. Again, there's resource and other timing issues with getting the audit done and stuff like that, but that is on the schedule of things to do. 17, adopt biweekly payroll. We pretty much have adopted biweekly payroll. It's going to go into effect in early 2013. It required collective bargaining, as it mentioned.
This was a
in here.
contract issue?
Yep. So we've completed all of that now, and it goes into effect in early next year. 18, implement records retention and disposition schedule. Absolutely, this needs to be done. We have reviewed all of this. There are record management functions with the town clerk, and I know that she is very much behind this, but there are some resource and infrastructure things that we're going to need to take care of or address in order to get going on this. But it is definitely a good recommendation. 19, streamline land schedules. I'm not even sure what that exactly means.
For fiscal 2013, we're in our property revaluation process. Deb Dilworth and her team completed that. After it was completed, there was a new set of rules that came out within maybe 48 hours. That gets to the crux of number 19.
So we did it.
We were looking to do it in 2016 in our next reval, because
Okay.
our vendors had already left the island. She and her team were actually able to take this on now. So they're getting it done now, knowing we can't set our tax rate until after special town meeting.
Okay.
So they all have this done. So we're actually 3 years ahead of schedule.
Great.
Nice.
Okay.
So that was 19 and 20, I think.
Okay.
21, consider the use of a field tablet. Okay. We can consider the use of a field, yes, with something like it.
On that one for the assessors,
Yeah.
as of right now, the technology that they would require doesn't exist. What's out there is archaic. So we're waiting a couple years before we do that. If we invest, we'd be wasting taxpayer dollars, and we don't want to do that.
Okay.
22, implement electronic billing. This is something that we need to proceed along with. People can pay their tax bills now via online, but obviously they don't get a tax bill.
It'd be nice to
online.
get it online.
It would. It's something that we need to figure out, and we need to get other things straightened out before we go to something like this. 23, consider help desk software application. Yes, this is a great idea, but again, we need to do other things first. 24, evaluate expansion of website service. Yes.
It's in the works.
It's in the
But I'd
works.
like to-
Permitting,
Permitting,
licensing, it's all
Continuing, I
being,
mean, we
Yeah.
just,
Well, one thing I'd like to sort of mention here too is that there's increased technology for the hearing impaired and the seeing folks that are challenged with sight issues too. Having those kinds of upgrades, I think, would be a really important piece for us to sort of focus on. It's probably not big dollars, and it would be really useful.
and we're in the, I'm assuming we're still going along the path of getting all of the licenses in this town online, so that if you want to buy a clam license and a mooring permit and everything, we can go to the website and punch your card number in and be done, and not have to go run around for half a day here and there to get all these permits.
Right. So that ends it, I believe, Libby, right?
That's it.
That's it?
There's just a couple of minor little attachments there, but they're not part
Not
of the
too much.
recommendations.
Nope.
So
Right.
we can get, as far as the sort of administrative stuff goes, we're happy to get back to you all from the cabinet at some point in the next month or two with some additional recommendations, because as we're starting to look at warrant articles for the 2013 annual town meeting, there may be some things that we want to get on there that connect with this. And then, so at some point, we'll put on the biweekly meeting item discussion.
Okay, great. Any other comments, questions?
Just one other question. Kind of ties in with several of the items. There are times when we find ourselves at these meetings carrying out functions which I think are totally nonsensical. For example, several weeks ago, you, Patty, we took turns reading a bond
yeah.
indenture into the record.
Yes.
How do we know we have to do that, and instinctively or
Well-
experientially? And could we appeal to Tim Madden to go change whatever statute requires that we spend our time doing things like that?
I'm not sure there's a law that says you have to read this into the record. However, legally, read into the record means read into the record, physically reading it in. You can't, you've got to have documentation that you've read it. So, and on that one, that might have been the grant and loan from the USDA, which was quite lengthy.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, when Bob and I were meeting with the individual from the federal government about all of the documents that had to be signed, I specifically asked him does the board really have to read this at the meeting? And his answer was a definitive yes.
So that was a federal grant?
Federal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think,
Okay.
in 5.5 years that I've been sitting here, I've only had to do that really once. I mean, there was a couple of other times where they were long, but that one was
Okay.
out of control.
It is tedious, but
Tedious.
hopefully it's infrequent.
Just need a reader.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do
We do
it.
need a
Can we
reader.
sign it?
You get a volunteer from high school or something
Okay.
next time.
Okay.
All right. Committee reports.
I have one. We had a coastal management plan meeting, was it Monday? I believe Monday. Monday or Tuesday? Monday, I think. Monday. We had it at the field station, Mass Field Station, because there was no meeting rooms available, but that's where we had it. We have set up a schedule. It's in October. I'll have the exact date at the next meeting. Libby can put it in the announcements. We're going to start with Area 2. The island's been broken into 10 areas, if you all remember. Area 2 is basically from Jetties Beach down to Eel Point. And we're going to have a public information session. We're going to gather as much input as we can, and then we're going to go through the matrix and write the preliminary draft plan for that area. When we're comfortable with that, we'll move on to Area 3. We're not quite sure how many meetings it's going to take for each area, so we're taking them one at a time. It will be advertised in the paper. It'll be on the town website. We'll contact all of the neighborhood associations in the area and let them know when the meetings are. So we're starting the process.
Thank you. Any other committee reports?
Patty, the two committees we sort of picked up on earlier, the Streets and Sidewalks and the Sewer Advisory Committee, but I had two non-committee or a couple.
Sure.
One, and I mentioned this before, the sort of the seal issue, if you will, and I think all of us may have talked to various elements of our community, be they nonprofit associations or interested individuals, and one thought is to see if we can, and they are probably more interested than we are, but getting some kind of a forum underway maybe this fall, and I'd just like to feel the board would be as supportive, like a co-sponsor, and I'm not sure who picks that up, but if we would be in agreement with that, it helps sort of move it along.
I would think, yeah.
So,
It's going to become an issue for the town.
yeah.
Bobby might even be a poster child.
Well, I'm sure Bobby will have an active interest, which is good. I mean, I think we all do, but I can just feel that all around. I know our representatives, Mr. Madden and Mr. Wolf, are both approached by people who have an interest in this
Right.
area, so it's going on, whether we get involved or not, and I think it's better we do. In connection, Bobby, with the coastal management plan, I note that the amendment to Article 61 at town meeting about the pilot project does call for the board to make findings if and when we get to that point. And I just raised that in the context, we or the staff or somebody's going to have to think about how to deal with that responsibility. So, for example, the article says, this is in terms of our approving a lease or license, provided that the Board of Selectmen shall find that such project will likely provide scientific data and information which will be of benefit and assistance to the town in developing a coastal management plan. So we're going to have some responsibilities, and I just raised that to help us think about how we're going to meet that responsibility. Whether it goes to, Bobby, your committee might be helpful here, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, Rick. First it's got to get through the Concom. So
Right,
let's
I
see
know
what happens
there's
there.
nothing on the, but
Right.
but when it comes up, it'll come up quickly.
I
thereafter,
personally,
you know?
myself, believe that this is a small enough project that it's easily removable if it is determined detrimental. And I look at it from the ability to extrapolate out on a larger scale the amount of nourishment that it's going to take for a project, I mean, it's good. I think it's 400 feet is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And if they have to add X, Y, Z amount of sand each year, and then somebody comes in and they want to do a mile of it, it's going to be, is it a feasible that they
Is
can
it
move that
scalable
much?
or not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can they move that much sand in the course of a year? How much downtide scouring does it have? So, that's my opinion on it. And at 400 feet, if we determine that it's a hazard, they can come in there with some loaders and some dump trucks and in a week clean the whole thing out, so.
But anyway, I just want to mention, because that is part of the responsibility we have, so.
So maybe we just note that to the administration to keep it on your radar screen in terms of communications with the Concom administrator as to where it might
Maybe he's
be.
our lead in that.
Because
So somebody's going to have to pick that up at some
I'm sure the
point.
coastal management plan will have some type of response to the
Response.
board on it.
Yeah.
Jeff is a member of that
Right.
committee, so he is,
Right.
when it gets, whatever they do, he'll keep us appraised of it, so.
Okay,
And Sarah's on the board as well, so.
right. And I think if administration has it in the back of their mind, it needs to come here if certain things happen, that we can keep it open for possible agenda item or an agenda item. All right, any other committee reports? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.